We're coming to you from East this week, and before we crossed to the free hit, I had the opportunity to catch up with Lorraine Pembroke from the East Hockey Club and what it's like to run a facility with their own turf. So Lorraine, what does it take to run a facility like this at East?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say we couldn't possibly do it without the heaps and heaps of volunteers that we have who work in the canteen every weekend, and they do a sensational job. We also have now 5 paid part-time employees. One does the club administration, which would be me, and then we have a chap who looks after the grounds and does a lot of the maintenance work, as well as does time in the canteen, and then we have 3 other shift supervisors who have their barista skills, their responsible service of alcohol, food handling courses, certificates, things like that. So, they look after making sure that the volunteers that come into the canteen know what they're supposed to be doing. Tom, the other thing is that we're not just a hockey club, we sort of run like a small business here. So there are lots of other volunteers involved in what you'd sort of call the back office, people who probably don't get recognised very often. And that's our treasurer, who does a fantastic job across the whole of the club and the facility. Sue, who looks after the accounting or the bookwork side of things. And there's just many other people that look after all sorts of things, like coming down, cleaning the turf in their own time, looking after the pump shed, stuff like that. That just happens in the background. No one sees them do it, it just happens. And we certainly wouldn't have the facility that we have today if we didn't have the people who are just happy to give hours and hours of volunteer time.
So Lorraine is one of the few clubs in Brisbane that own their own turf. What is involved in maintaining the turf?
Yes, Tom, so I'm not sure a lot of people understand about what goes into maintaining the turf to a top quality. We have here at East a sweeper vac that is like about the size of a golf cart, and we use that every 2 weeks or so to go over the turf to pick up all the surface material. It needs to be quite dry for it to perform at its best. So during the season we've actually stopped the sprinklers working during the training session, so we might switch the sprinklers off on a Tuesday night and then turn them back on again on a Friday night, and then on Friday during the day we might spend 5 hours going over the turf to actually pick up all that surface material. Because we're a 7-day-a-week facility, that's the only way we've been able to actually do that side of the maintenance. One of the problems that all the turf facilities face is that there's dust in the atmosphere, and there's also players who don't see the importance of cleaning their shoes properly when they walk onto the turf. But every bit of dirt that actually ends up on the surface, then with the sprinklers coming on top of that dirt, eventually finds its way down to the bottom of the pile. And then that dirt, if it stays in there for long enough, and if the atmospheric conditions are conducive, then that dirt will eventually grow mould or grow algae, and then that's what makes the turf slippery. So every year we have Tiger Turf come and do their annual service and clean the turf surface completely for us. Tiger Turf put out a product to kill the algae, which is used regularly. So over the last couple of years we've tried a number of different methods to try and keep that mould at bay. This year we decided to think big, and we hired a mini vac truck from Harrison's hire down at Beenleigh, and that was like a vacuum and a high pressure water blaster. So we used the water blaster to loosen and lift the dirt out of the turf, and then to vacuum that surface straight away as it was coming out. And I think the results speak for themselves. I know all the feedback that we've been given has been great, that's vastly improved. And now the great thing is that we can see when a player walks onto the field from our dugout with dirty shoes, we can go, hey, that was you, like here's the dirty footprints that we can see. And players really need to be aware of keeping their shoes as clean as possible. So when they come down to any turf venue, not just ours, it'd be really appreciated if they do make an effort to not just walk through the water, but actually scrub their shoes on the shoe brushes and then walk through the water, so that every single bit of dirt is off their shoes, because if that comes onto the turf, that's going to affect the turf long term.
And Lorraine, you hear players comment about they get an infection out of the turf.
Yeah, that's probably quite annoying to hear that, because what it is that it's not necessarily the turf that's giving them the infection. What it is if we were to fall over in the dirt, we would actually go and clean it and disinfect it. Players have to understand that that's exactly the same thing they need to do if they fall over on the turf. It's not the turf but they have to be aware that it's an outdoor playing facility or turf, and it will have, you know, dirt, it'll have wildlife droppings, it'll have anything like that, and that needs to be disinfected. So the players need to understand that if they open a wound that they've had previously, they fall over, they give themselves a gravel rash, whatever, that needs to be treated before they leave the venue. Don't go home and think about it tomorrow. It needs to be done today. So the players need to take that on themselves and make sure that they do whatever they can so that they don't get an infection.
So Lorraine, the turf's not the only part of the facility?
No, Tom, we've actually got 3 viewing decks here at the facility. The first one that we're sitting on at the moment is the Pembroke Kerry deck, and it was constructed at the same time as building the facility due to our development approval needing to have a certain percentage of shade to go with the sporting facility. So the naming of the deck was in recognition of the work that both Adrian Pembroke and Ray Kerry did in not only just finding the land, but in negotiating leases, applying for grants, seeing the project built through the 12 months, and then in actually finalising the whole project and realising the dream of this facility.
So Lorraine, we're up at the favourite place that I've got to watch hockey at East Tiger Turf.
Yes, this deck was completed earlier this year. It's called Macca's Way in honour of Sue McLean, who was a life member of the club and did a lot of work for our women's division. She bequeathed some money in her will to us after losing her battle with cancer, and so we thought the popularity of this place for people to watch hockey from, what better way for us to honour her than to put a deck here. It links the Clem Jones Centre Sports Club car park to our little lower viewing deck that we have here, and it just seemed to be a nice way to fit off this area, and obviously we've put up a nice big sign so that everybody knows where the funds came from to actually complete this deck.
So what do we have behind us, Lorraine?
So this is the biggest of our 3 decks. It's actually a great place to view the game from, and the main driving force behind this was to actually have a place that's sheltered from all weather conditions, the sun, the wind and the rain. And in designing this deck, we actually wanted it to be a social place, not just to have a grandstand as such. So we've held quite a few little functions up the far end, one of them being the hockey zone function last year. But yeah, it's been a great space for us to use, and it's certainly a great place to watch hockey from.
So Lorraine, what does the future hold?
Well, we've just undergone a solar electricity program where we've covered the canteen roof with solar panels, and the reason for this is our largest expense to run this facility is our electricity, obviously powering the lights, but our plan is to generate enough power off the solar panels on the canteen roof to cover our electricity running costs during the day. Down the track, it'd be great to think that we might get enough money together to buy the battery system needed to actually store our power and be able to run our lights off that. And during that process, we also looked into what it would cost us to change over our facility and use LED lighting. Unfortunately, this is way above us at the moment in terms of what the initial outlay would have to be.
And the turf, Lorraine?
Yeah, the turf's been down for 5 years now. This is our 5th season. We have a guarantee on the surface for 10 years, so we've got another 5 years without having too much trouble with it. We just had Tiger Turf come up earlier in the year and inspect it, and they're very happy with how it's wearing. We're certainly very happy with the condition of it as well. And right from the word go, we established a sinking fund, which we have been putting money away to for each year. And we're well ahead in our plans of having enough money there in 7 years to replace that carpet in 10 years' time or longer if that's what it needs.
So Lorraine, advice for other clubs who are contemplating putting a turf down?
You know, we would certainly encourage any club at all who can actually put together the funds required to have a go at this. There's certainly plenty of scope out there for the turf to be used by lots of clubs. We're to capacity every week. Training wise, and yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. It certainly, for us, it was very easy at the start. We had lots and lots of volunteers, and as the time's gone on, that volunteer base has shrunk. But yeah, it's been certainly really well worth it for us, and I'm just really glad that we've been able to do it and provide such a quality venue. And just to put it out there, we'd be more than happy as a club to offer as much advice to any other club who was contemplating this, or was close to getting a grant through, or being able to put their turf down, to be able to provide as much advice and help in any way we can.
Terrific. And speaking of grants, Lorraine, the club has been the recipients of a couple of grants that has assisted the facility.
Absolutely. We earlier this year we received the Brisbane City Council Suburban Crime Prevention Grant, which has allowed us to put in 12 security cameras plus 2 high definition cameras that focus on the turf only, as well as monitoring equipment. So it's like a full CCTV monitoring system. Together with that, we can get apps onto our smartphones where we can monitor 24 hours a day at wherever we are, to actually see what's happening around the venue and on the turf. So that's been fantastic. The second part of that grant is to install some security lighting, which is solar powered, and those lights will be installed in the next couple of weeks along the pathways and close to our car parks, to just allow people leaving the facility at night time to be able to have that feeling of security with the lighting of those areas.
Great protection for the facility as well.
Absolutely. And the second grant, which we've just received recently, is for a playground. And we're happy to say that we're going to be using Playworks, which is one of Hockey Zone's sponsors.
Absolutely.
To provide the playground, as they had the most suitable equipment for what we were looking for. And the playground will be installed towards the southern end of the hockey field or hockey venue, and yeah, that should be underway in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and that'll be available for anyone in the community to use. So really looking forward to that inclusion.
Fantastic.